In today's journey, we're going to talk about the problems with homebrew competitions and why you should still enter them anyways. And yes, even if you've only been brewing for a year, you should still enter. Heck, I've seen someone win gold medal on their first batch ever. It wasn't me, but I did sell them the equipment that they used to brew their first batch. And I'll tell you what I told them. Feedback from a certified BJCP judge is a good thing. Whether it's telling you how bad you were or where you did things great, it's good just to have a reference point. And you get basically a report card including the score points and notes from the judges. It's a great opportunity to get feedback from somebody who isn't just excited to get another free beer. They're there to do a job, and that job is to give you feedback. In fact, I'm new to mead making, and what I'm really excited about is getting some feedback in an upcoming competition. Link in the description. Which leads me to why I love competitions the most, and that's an excuse to break out the good stuff. Whether it's exotic honeys, expensive sugars, or just hard to find products that you don't see everywhere. Everyone needs an opportunity to get creative, and that's what contests can really be for, because not only can you try something new, you can get feedback on it. And that leads into number 3, where it's about the adventure. In fact, my favorite part about entering a homebrew contest is planning what I'm going to do. And when that inevitably falls apart, about changing the direction to something that will work. And along the way, you'll probably learn something that'll help you out with your day-to-day brewing. And hey, since things can be so subjective at these contests, you never know, you might win, so why the hell not enter? And a lot of times, these contests are associated with some kind of charity or something, so even if you lose, somebody wins. So, even despite all of its negatives, I would still say everyone should enter contests still, especially newer brewers, who could really benefit from the additional feedback. But that's enough being nice. Why is Phil talking forever about the fact that you should enter contests when this video is called The Problem with Homebrew Competitions? And that's because it's nothing nefarious any one person is doing. It's just the problem with most competitions, like photography contests. It's subjective. We can have people lift heavy weights to see who's the strongest. We can have people kick around a sports ball to see who's the sports balliest. But how do you judge who can make you weep the most at a read poem on a specific Tuesday? Did you luck out and get the judge that's not going to deduct you 50 points just for not liking raspberries? And that shouldn't be a problem for a certified judge, but that goes into the next topic. There is a lack of certified judges, and that can become a real problem when you try to put on a competition. In fact, I've seen some competitions die just because they can't get enough certified judges, even after fluffing the number with amateur judges. It's not uncommon for a certified judge to be paired up with 2 or 1 amateur judges, officially referred to as a non-BJCP judge. But they don't get paid, so be nice to them. I'd say buy them a beer, but that sounds a bit like supporting bribery. Also, the day of the competition, they've probably drank enough beer, as at big competitions, they've already had to split single categories across multiple tables, and that's even after shoving as many beers down a single judge's throat as possible. Some categories, it's easy to get all of the people judged at one table, like wild ales. Not a lot of people enter the category. Whereas the IPA category has subcategories within subcategories. Even at sample size glasses, that's a lot of beer to have to drink. That's a lot to swallow, even with a spit bucket. So let's say hypothetically you brewed up a pepper pineapple porter. That's a porter with pineapple and Caribbean red peppers. And you entered it into the tropical stouts category. Well, first you've already lost because that's the wrong category. Tropical stouts are stouts that are drank in the tropics, not with tropical flavors. But let's say this competition had so many people that entered tropical stouts that they had to split the judging across multiple tables. Now we have a perfect storm to cause all kind of havoc for multiple people. An inexperienced certified judge that's new to the scene may make the mistake that tropical stouts don't have fruit in them. Plus, he really likes spicy beer, so this score is abnormally high in a category that it should have instantly lost in. Or conversely, that this could have ended up at a table with a very serious judge with a delicate palate. There are some checks and balances in place to prevent something like this from happening, but theoretically, the judge could be surprised by the extreme spiciness of the beer in a category that it shouldn't have been in, damage his palate so that beers tasted further down the line take a negative hit, meaning theoretically that Tony the Wonder Super Spice Brewer cost the win for somebody else in the category. And you're right, that probably isn't happening at every competition. The bigger problem is that the number scale used by each individual for rating things can vary drastically. And those 5 extra points that you could squeak out by just getting a nicer judge can actually really make or break your ability to compete at the best in show category or for the top 3 spots in your categories, which aren't actually judged based off your score points, but an overall consensus of 3 judges. But to get to that point, you first have to get a high score. Plus you add in the subjectiveness. It's basically like winning the lottery sometimes. And that's not even the only one. You also have to win the idiot lottery. The double-blind nature of the guidelines does help a lot with cheating and just getting an unbiased opinion from the judges. It helps in the long run. The problem is that when a problem does come up, there's not really a long evidence chain to follow. It just is or isn't, and that's what happened. For the most part, when you work with somebody that's done contests before, it's very streamlined, and as long as you follow the guidelines, you're gonna be alright. But it still is a process, and a process that involves people, and people make mistakes. Computers also make mistakes, but that's not the topic today. Because people are far more likely to make a clerical mistake or accidentally mislabel a bottle so that 2 people's mystery beers get mixed up. It just comes down to sometimes there's a gamble in life, and someday barcode technology will come by and help out a lot, but even then, as long as a person's involved, there will always be a chance for a mistake. And that leads into the final problem, and that's the inconsistency that happens. So not only is there a subjectiveness to how beer tastes to a lot of people, but just the mood that the taster is in can change the subjectivity of it. The first beer of the day versus the last beer of the day. Was the sandwich that they ate during the break mediocre, or was it great and was a distraction? It could go either way. Maybe they didn't get a good night's sleep, or maybe it's a multiple day event and things happen overnight. And I'm not trying to be a jerk to the judges about this. It's being human. And what a lot of people forget, because it's called a beer brewing contest, that the judges themselves are putting themselves through a sports-like gauntlet. So not only are they competing in a way, they're getting no recognition for it. Well, technically they are getting experience points. Like literally experience points. Like Dungeons and Dragons. And they also need them to level up. And I'd say that that's the lesson that I'm learning live at the time of this recording. Is that the real problem with homebrew competitions is that the judges don't get the love and respect that they really deserve for what they're putting forth. It's a lot of work and really hard to become a judge, especially a grandmaster. And what do they really get out of it in the end? They're basically the equivalent of one of those wine people I can't pronounce, but they can't get a job at a fancy Italian place like they can. Well, some of them probably can. So until we come up with a much better way of showing our appreciation to our certified beer judges, let's celebrate them by entering more contests. And if there's no contests in your area, make some. In fact, that's what Garrett over at ManMade Mead did with his pals at Doing the Most and FaeWood Mead. They saw the need for a mead competition, and so they stepped up with their community to make it happen. We put the link in the description, but at the time of this upload, you should be able to enter come this April. We ourselves will even be entering this contest because we have nothing to do with putting it on. Links in the description, but if you're also interested in learning more about making mead, check out some of their channels listed below. Alright, so now that we have a contest worth entering, and we know what to look out for, but how do we make the best out of the situation? The first thing I would remind you is that bigger just means more complex. This applies to not only the competition that you enter, but the recipe that you're going to submit. Of course, the bigger the contest, the more people that you're competing against, but also the more chances there are for error because there's more people involved with running the contest. Start small, and then work your way up to the big national contests. Same thing applies to your recipe. The bigger and flashier it is, the more things that can go wrong, or just it becomes harder to place in a category. Enter something simple and work with that first. This is a contest of technique, not pretentiousness. This next one can be harder than it sounds, but follow the guidelines. Read the categories that you're entering into and make sure that it fits to the T. This can sometimes be the most frustrating part of the whole process. But if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask somebody. They're just as interested as you are for your beer to be entered into the right category, for reasons like what we talked about earlier. And if the host or the organizer of the contest is unwilling to give you an answer, you probably don't want to enter that contest anyways, so definitely ask questions. One of the biggest sins is rushing to get something together for a contest. The people who win those routine gold medals, they brew good mead, beer, or cider all year round. Now, I'm guilty of this myself, but when you hear a contest coming out, your first thing shouldn't be, oh, I know what I'll make for that. It should be, I have something in the cellar for this. A lot of flavors mellow, come forward, mature while aging, and a young mead, beer, or cider, other than a wheat beer, usually does better with some age, usually at least 60 days. Even an IPA needs some time on it. But at the end of the day, you can't lose if what you're entering for is the score sheet in the first place. It can be sometimes hard to fit what you're trying to do into the categories there are to enter, but it's the only way to get real honest feedback these days. So yeah, homebrew competitions definitely have a lot of flaws, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't enter, and the flaws that they have don't affect the score sheet at the end of the day. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that entering a contest at least once a year is your duty as a brewer, vinter, or whatever you identify as. So long as you hit that subscribe button and check out some of these other videos that we make, we'll love you either way. Entering a contest but don't quite know what to do? Leave a comment down below and maybe we can help. We may have never won a contest before, but that doesn't mean that we haven't helped those that have.